And as I was planting those beans and peas, one thing that I kind of started to think about was how nice it is sometimes just to do stuff the simple way. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope everybody out there is having a fantastic day. Today in the garden, we're going to be talking about something what I call fall replanting. So we're not quite yet ready to plant some cool season crops around here, but now is a great time to be thinking about replanting some of the stuff that we grew in the spring. So we're going to be talking about what can you replant for fall if your climate allows. Talk about what we're actually going to be replanting for fall. Going to take a look at our pumpkins, our transplants we put in the ground in the last couple of videos. Talk about a little bit of the struggles we're having with those. And then we're going to do some fall replanting in this plot here behind me. Going to try to get some beans and peas in the ground. So before we get deep into that fall replanting discussion, let's take a look at these pumpkin transplants we put in the ground last video and maybe the video before that, how they're doing and what we've been having to do to kind of keep them going in the early stages. So we put in 2 rows of pumpkin transplants right there in that plot, and we put in 2 rows of pumpkin transplants over there in that plot, and you can see I've got the overhead sprinkler running on that one right now. Now it's cooled off a little bit today. We got a little bit of cloud cover, but the 2 days before today it was pretty hot, and some of these new young transplants here have been struggling a little bit. You can see we lost one right there. See the leaves on that one look a little wilted, look a little pitiful, and I expected to lose a few here and there. That's why we planted so many, but the heat the last couple days really been working on them. Now, because I don't have a whole lot of vegetables growing in the gardens right now, I don't have a whole lot of water and responsibility, I've been able to give these new pumpkin transplants plenty of water to try to, you know, keep them alive. So the problem is, when they're newly transplanted in the ground like that, they're not really, or they don't really have roots formed into that soil yet. They're still kind of relying on that transplant root ball a little bit. Once they form roots into the soil, they should be fine, but right now they're a little needy, and so I've been having to use the overhead sprinkler in the middle of the day just to kind of cool the plants off a little bit, running the water a good bit. I'm hoping in the next few days, once they get some roots established, they'll start looking a lot better. What I really need is about 2 days of really overcast, kind of drizzly weather. I think that would help a lot, but I don't know that we're going to get that, so until then, I'm just going to have to baby them a little bit like I've been doing. So the fall pumpkins have been a little bit of a struggle so far, but thankfully we're not going to be as hot towards the end of this week. I think we're going to stay, you know, 91 and below, which is a lot better than 95 or 96. That 4 or 5 degrees can make a huge difference on those transplants. So hopefully a little cooler summer weather helps them out and helps get them going. So now let's talk about what I call fall replanting. Now I know this is somewhat climate specific. It may not apply exactly to everyone the same, but hopefully everyone watching still finds it useful. So down here in South Georgia in Zone 8B, I'm not really trying to put any cool season vegetables in the ground until, say, late September or early October. Now that can vary a bit from year to year. It just depends on how long summer lasts. Sometimes warm summer temps go into October, into mid-October here. Sometimes we start seeing temperatures break a little bit at the end of September. It just varies from year to year. But I'm really not focused on getting cool season crops in the ground until then, when those temperatures start to break a little. But what we can plant right now are more warm season crops. So with this fall replanting, as I call it, we can plant pretty much anything that we planted in the spring as far as warm season vegetables go. Now for our fall replanting, we're not going to replant every single thing we planted in the spring, but if your climate allows, you pretty much can do that if you want to. So if you want to plant another round of tomatoes, you certainly can. I would recommend picking a variety that was pretty disease resistant. I would also go with a determinate variety for a fall planting, something that's going to give you a lot of tomatoes in a short window, because you really don't have time to wait on all that indeterminate production. So You can do fall tomatoes. You can also do fall peppers and eggplant. Sometimes down here our peppers make it all the way through the summer and keep producing well into fall. Sometimes the pepper plants start looking a little pitiful this time of year, and we'll start kind of a fresh batch and have a different fall crop coming along. You can also plant more summer squash in your fall garden. Much like the tomatoes, I recommend picking a variety that has some good disease resistant to it, and have a plan to deal with the pickle worms. They're probably going to be, worse this time of year than they were back in the spring, but you can certainly still do well with summer squash, in the late summer and fall months. Same thing with cucumbers. Pick a disease resistant variety and just keep an eye on the pests. But you can still get some decent harvests there. They may not be what you got in the spring, but you can still do pretty well with either of those. Then you've got beans and peas, which we're going to be putting in the ground here in a little bit. Now with the beans and peas, when you're planting those in kind of late summer, one thing you'd have to worry about sometimes is rust, especially if it's real humid where you are. So you may have to be pretty active about spraying a fungicide early on to keep that rust from just taking down the plants. But usually if you can get them up and going, they'll produce well for you. Then we've got pumpkins and watermelons, which we're obviously trying here. We've got those pumpkin transplants we're kind of nursing along right now. We've got a fall watermelon plot over here, which is looking pretty good right now. Not sure what's going to happen as far as if we're going to get a bunch of viable fruits or not, but we're at least giving it a try. If you've got another 80 or so days of warm weather left, you can certainly plant another round of corn. I've grown fall sweet corn successfully for many years. Probably not going to do it this year because we put up so much in the spring, but you can plant fall sweet corn and do well with it. Okra is another one. So we planted one round of okra in the spring, and we just planted another round, 3 rows of that Ruiz okra a few weeks ago. It's on up probably about that tall right now. So maybe your first planting of okra, maybe the production is declining a little bit, maybe the plants have gotten too tall and it's kind of a booger to harvest them. Just start you another round of okra in another spot, and you should have production all the way until your first frost. And then the last one to mention here would be taters. So last year we successfully grew some fall taters. Wasn't a super abundant harvest, wasn't like our spring harvest, but we did okay with it, and I think it's still worth doing. So if you have some taters left over from your spring harvest and they still look pretty good, maybe they've already got some sprouts on them at this point, you can certainly stick them in the ground pretty soon and make a little bit of a fall crop. That way you have some taters going into the winter months. And then of course for the non-veggie stuff, you've got lots of different flowers you can still plant. Zinnias, marigolds, sunflowers, all kind of good stuff there. So lots of options as far as fall replanting goes. We're not going to replant all those things because some of them, we just had enough of them in the spring. I don't really feel like I need to plant them again, but some of them we are going to replant. And so for our fall replanting, our warm season crops that we're going to plant again in fall, I've pretty much done all I'm going to do with the exception of a couple things. So watermelons are going, pumpkins are going, we've got okra going. We're going to put some beans and peas in this plot today, and I'm probably going to start another round of peppers in the greenhouse pretty soon, grow some more of those Pueblo chili peppers. I've also got those chocolate habaneros that aren't quite ready to transplant. So today we're going to be working on getting some stuff planted in this little plot right here where we have our arch panel trellis, and then we got a little room to the right of it over there. Now one thing I'm going to do this fall is I'm going to shrink this plot a little bit. You can see there I've got about 3 or 4 foot of space between the grass and where that arch panel trellis starts, and so I'd usually have my drip system, the main line and everything right on the edge of that grass, but that ended up just being kind of wasted space there because didn't really grow anything in that little gap. So I'm going to move my drip system closer to that arch panel trellis. We'll let the grass just kind of grow up closer to that edge there, shrink it on that end a little bit. And I'm also going to shrink it down here on this end. So I thought about adding another panel to my arch panel trellis, making it longer, but I really don't need it any bigger than it is. No matter what I grow on here, we end up getting plenty of production to where I don't need this structure to be any bigger than it is. So I was leaving this on the end blank here, and sometimes I'd run my drip lines all the way to the end and just plant some one-off stuff here. But it ended up being just more than a pain, more of a pain than anything else. So I'm going to let this grow up here. You can see it's already started to grow up a little bit, and basically shrink this plot down so it's just the width of this arch panel trellis. Now, if you've been following along real closely, you may remember that we planted something on this arch panel here, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago or so. We planted some heirloom field peas. We're gonna try to replant some of those today. Planted those field peas, and right after we planted them is when we started getting all this rain. If we know anything about field peas, if you get too much water, they don't germinate as well. Could have been too much water, could have been that some of them washed away with all that rain, but we didn't get very good germination there. What ended up happening was the plot just kind of started growing up with weeds and a few of those pea plants. It looked like a mess for a couple weeks. I got it cleaned up this past weekend so we can plant something in it now, but when we had that stretch of all that rain, I just couldn't keep up with it, and I kind of let it go, but hopefully we can get back control of it today. So we're going to plant two different things in this plot here today. We're going to do a redo of these black heirloom climbing field peas that Richard from Tennessee sent us. So hopefully we can get these up and going a lot better than we did the first time. As long as we don't get a ton of rain in the next week, I think we should be fine. And then we're going to plant these babies right here. So I bought these back in the spring when I was ordering seeds online from Morgan County Seeds. This is the King of Garden lima bean. So this is a climbing lima bean or climbing butter bean. Now, we've grown a lot of the Christmas lima bean in the past. I still have some of those in the freezer from last year. They're really, really good. That's a speckled climbing lima bean. This is a green climbing lima bean. I've never grown this one before, but I always wanted to try it. I bought these seeds in the spring knowing that I wasn't going to plant them in the spring. I was kind of saving them to the fall. I just went ahead and got them since I was placing the order. And I think I got way more than I need right here. But I'm hoping for a good crop of these because I'd really like to put some of these in the freezer to go with our speckled lima beans that we already have in the freezer. Now, when we planted these black field peas the first time, we planted these to grow on our arch panel trellis, but I think I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I think I'm going to put these King of Garden lima beans on the arch panel trellis, and then for that extra space over there, I'm going to plant a row of these black climbing field peas, and then I'm going to put up a Hortonova trellis for those guys to climb on. So our drip system here is already put together, saved it from the previous crops we had growing in this plot. We just got to kind of stretch it out a little bit. And I think I'm going to do this a little bit different than the way I normally do it, just because sometimes it's hard to bury the drip tape alongside that arch panel trellis there. So I think we're just going to kind of lay it out on the ground. I may cover it up later if we heal these beans or peas. So the first thing we need to do here is just kind of stretch out our drip tape a little bit. I want to make sure that our emitters are facing upward. Just kind of untangle this and stretch it out along the length of our arch panel trellis. So we got our tape stretched out now, but I got one thing I need to fix down here on the end because we are shortening up this plot a little bit. So since we got more tape than we need down here now, I need to cut this and reinstall my row end. So I'll cut it off like that. Take this row end off this end, and then we'll reinstall it here now that the tape is exactly the length of our arch panel trellis. Alright, so we got our drip tape cut to length, got our row ends reinstalled there. I went ahead and turned on the drip system, hooked the water hose up to it at the front of the plot there to check for leaks, and I'm glad I did because I had a leak right here. You can see where it was spraying out onto the soil there, but I got a little coupling installed, still dribbling a little bit, but a lot better than it was. Now, I mentioned that I'm not going to bury the tape, at least right now I'm not, but what I am going to do is just come along here in a few spots, throw a little soil over the top of the tape. That'll hold it in place, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Won't cover all of it, I'll just throw a little dirt on top of it every, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet or so. That should hold it in place. Now, I'm not really sure how this happened, but when I had the main line back there against that grass line, These drip tape lines here were running tied up against those posts. For some reason now they're off those posts just a hair, but I don't think it's going to be a huge problem. I think I got enough room there. I can plant right between those posts and that drip tape all the way down. So I'm going to do this the old school way with the end of my hoe here. I'm just going to make a tiny little furrow right beside that tape there. Don't need it to be too deep. We'll cover it up later. Just going to scratch me out a little furrow right here. Now usually I would put some inoculant and some pre-plant fertilizer in my little planting furrow here, but I already did that a few weeks ago when we tried to plant those field peas and they didn't come up, so I don't think there's no need to add any more. We just need to put our beans in the furrow here, and I like to plant these things thick since they're growing vertically. I'm going to put a seed every probably 3 inches or so. I got plenty of seeds. I think this bag of seeds here is only $4 or so, so not going to hurt anything, plant them thick. Now we got our seeds in the ground, we're going to take the other end of our hoe and just cover them up. And that's it for the lima beans. Now some of y'all may be wondering, well, you don't soak your lima bean seeds before planting? Well, you can, but that drip tape there is going to do plenty of soaking for us, and for the way I plant them, I've never really found it to be necessary. But if you want to soak them, go ahead and soak them. We'll let that drip run for several hours, and then that soil will be nice and moist. They should come up pretty quick, as hot as it is out here today and with some 90-degree temps the next few days. So hopefully we can take that $4 bag of seed and turn it into about 15 quart bags of butter beans in the freezer. If we do, I think it'll be money well spent. And now for our black field peas, which we're going to plant in this row right here. We're going to do them pretty much exactly the same way we did those lima beans over there. However, I think I'm going to do these on a double row, so we're going to plant on both sides of that tape. So we'll take our hoe handle, just like we did with those butter beans. Scratch us out a little furrow right here. Scratch us out a little furrow right here. That way we can plant us a double row. We're going to plant these puppies here real thick, thicker than we planted them butter beans. Probably a seed every inch or so. I got plenty of seeds. We'll get them in there thick so we have a nice dense stand. All right, all right, all right. We got her did. So now we'll let that drip tape run for several hours, soak that seed bed in good, and if we don't get any crazy rain, we should get pretty good germination here. I do have a little tiny pinhole leak right over here. You can see where the soil is wet from that. It's not big enough for me to lose any sleep over. I'll probably fix it in the next day or so, but it is tiny, tiny. It's not shooting out a ton of water there. Something I will need to fix in the future though. And I think actually having this drip tape kind of on top of the soil is going to work better here as far as getting that seed bed soaked, because the water's going down, not having to go up. And so we should get some good uniform soakage, if that's a word, along the seed bed here and get some good uniform germination. And as I was planting those beans and peas, one thing that I kind of started to think about was how nice it is sometimes just to do stuff the simple way. Now, I didn't do this intentionally, but I just started thinking about it kind of after the fact. I got a garden shed full of all kind of specialized tools over there that I could have used here that might have made things a little bit easier. But in this case, it was pretty enjoyable for me to just get out here with this one tool, this little hoe right here, and do what I needed to do. We use this end of it to make a furrow, use this end to cover it up. Now, did this take a little longer than it would with a bigger rake? Maybe so. But sometimes it's just nice to grab one tool instead of a bunch of tools, get out there, find a way to make it work. So besides maybe doing some more peppers in the next few weeks, that's pretty much all the fall replanting we're going to do, all the warm season crops that we're going to plant again for fall. And let me know in the comments below if you're doing any fall replanting, what particular crops you're going to try to replant. Maybe you got skunked in the spring, you're going to try to redeem yourself in the fall. Maybe you didn't get as much in the freezer in the spring, you want to add to your freezer stock in the fall. Let me know in the comments below what your fall replanting plan is. And if you have any additional questions about replanting warm season crops in fall, whether it be planting dates or particular varieties or anything like that, put those in the comments as well and I'll try to answer them for you. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to check out our affiliate links below. A lot of great companies that we use in our gardens here at Lazy Dog Farm. Even got some coupon codes for some of those companies so you can take advantage of those discounts. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where we've got hats, shirts, recipes, recommended products. Even got a blog we did last year about our fall replanting. You might want to check that out. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like and share, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell, by the beauty of your life.